Guys, welcome to my ultimate review of the MOZA R5 bundle. Now this is a very interesting direct drive wheel which I'll be reviewing in full detail. I've been driving this wheel for over 2 weeks now, just getting settings dialed in. I've got an unboxing in this video. I've also been using this wheel on the PlayStation 5 with the Raslution 2 adapter, and I've basically covered everything you need to know about the R5 bundle in this video. Just to be clear, MOZA Racing have sent me this R5 bundle to review for free. However, MOZA have no creative license or say over anything that I say in my review. They are completely confident in their product to allow me full creative freedom to review this exactly how I see it. Now this is an exciting opportunity for me. I feel very privileged to have received this wheel from MOZA to test for free, and that's quite simply because you guys, the viewers, have allowed this to happen. So I have a responsibility to you guys, the viewers, to tell you exactly what I think about this MOZA R5 bundle. So as we open the box, the first thing you're going to see is the instruction sheet and a sticker sheet. Now everybody loves stickers, that's fantastic. You also get the wheel rim nicely packaged on top. First impressions is very, very good. You also get the power adapter for the wheelbase. On the second layer of the box, you will find the desk clamp. Now I won't be using the desk clamp in this review, but it looks pretty suitable from what I can see. You also get two bags that include all of the cables, interconnecting cables, the USB cable, and a bunch of screws, tools and hardware to get you sorted. Then you also have the wheelbase. This is a real solid bit of kit. It looks incredibly sturdy. Screw mounts from the bottom, many ports on the rear to install all the different peripherals. Then finally we have the pedal set. It is a 2-pedal setup in the bundle, throttle and brake only. Now MOZA Racing did also send me the SRP Lite clutch pedal, which is an additional third pedal you can add to the pedal base. Now the clutch pedal isn't something that I would choose to buy, but because MOZA sent me this, I will install it as part of the pedal set, which saves me installing it at a future date if I wanted to review it in the future. Now to install and change the pedal sets, it's actually incredibly easy. There's 4 screws per pedal from the top plate, and you simply unscrew those 4 screws, slide the pedals to where you want them to be, and then you reinstall the screws to secure it down. Now what I'm doing here is I'm moving the brake pedal to the center, and then I'll be adding the clutch pedal to the left hand side. The way the pedals connect together is that you have the throttle pedal, which plugs into the central brake pedal. Then the clutch pedal also then plugs into the brake pedal, and the brake pedal then connects to the wheelbase. All of the screws and tools required to screw the clutch pedal onto the foot plate are included with the clutch pedal. To complete the installation, we simply make sure that all the pedals are connected together, all of the ports are labelled. It's actually incredibly easy. So let me run you through a few first impressions for the MOZA R5 bundle. The pedal box seems incredibly sturdy. Now other reviews have noted this as potentially the weakest area of this R5 bundle, so we'll see how it drives, but from initial impressions I'm feeling quite satisfied with the pedals. The brake pedal is it's not a load cell, it is a linear pedal, but I used the linear pedal already on the G29, and each of the pedals feels really solid. Each of them has a slightly different feel to it, and the clutch pedal especially just feels a lot more stiff than the other ones. So I think they have tuned all of these. I got the impression from other reviews that it was just same spring throughout, but actually compared to what I've seen in other reviews, I'm impressed by the pedals so far. Moving on to the wheelbase. Now this is a compact, dense item. It's metal in the front part of the wheelbase, but it's got a plastic rear cap with all of the ports and the power button on the back. It has MOZA's quick release system, which from what I've had a quick play with, it seems incredibly good. Once it's properly mounted on my GT Omega Classic cockpit, wheel stand and cockpit, I will see how that works in much more detail. But for now, this looks like a really solid bit of kit, and I think that's going to look absolutely fantastic there on my sim rig. I'm super excited to get this mounted up. Now onto the wheel rim itself. Again, feels quite sturdy. The kind of faux leather maybe wheel rim feels good. The diameter of this wheel rim is pretty much exactly the same as the G29. The paddle shifters on the back have a really positive click to them. They aren't magnetic shifters, but they actuate much more quickly than the G29 shifters. With the G29, you've got to pull a long way before the micro switch engages, whereas these ones, it's a very small, precise, crisp motion. The clamping quick release is pretty fantastic. Like, we all want to be race car drivers, guys, so having a quick release steer wheel is going to put me right up there. Now on the front, there are a lot of buttons. D-pad, the Xbox style button labels here. Now, because this is not a specifically compatible PlayStation wheel, there are no PlayStation labels or buttons, so it'd be interesting to see which buttons map to which. But the thing I like about this MOZA Racing wheel format is it has typical controller button layouts, typical controller D-pad layouts. What puts me off with a lot of other high-end sim wheels is they just have buttons on them. After all, we are playing games. We do need to navigate through menus, so it's really good that they've got a D-pad and normal buttons there. Now, just a quick word on the pedals. I won't be installing the brake pedal performance kit just yet, because this can be installed from the top without having to disassemble the sim rig. I want to try this brake pedal completely stock, how it comes out of the bundle. Now, of course, I have added the clutch pedal, but I'm not going to use it for part of the review. So aside from pedal spacing, all I've changed that you would get in the default R5 bundle is just to move the brake pedal to the center point. Everything else would be as you would receive it in the R5 bundle. Before we install the R5 bundle into my GT Omega Classic wheel stand, I need to do some slight disassembly of the G29. And guys, if you want anything from GT Omega, check out the links in the description below. Discount code CD5 will get you 5% off anything at GT Omega. Check out the links in the description below if you want to upgrade your sim rig. To install the pedals, I used the included screws and some washers and nuts that were included with my GT Omega Classic wheel stand. Installing the R5 wheelbase in my GT Omega Classic wheel stand, I used the included screws that were included with the R5 bundle. Now, it's difficult to find exact holes. GT Omega have provided many holes on the surface of this classic wheel stand. It almost looks like Swiss cheese, and yet still the R5 doesn't quite fit some of them. Two of the screws fit absolutely perfectly. It would be nice if hardware manufacturers could agree a bolt standard for all wheelbases going forwards. Next, we're going to plug in the cables from all of the different peripherals into the wheelbase. Now, the first cable is going to be the coiled cables from the pedals, and this coiled cable seems to be new on this version of the R5. In the previous reviews, other reviewers have had just a straight Cat 5 style cable. Now we're going to plug in the power cable. Another thing to note, guys, is that this R5 wheelbase seems to have a lot more ports on the back than I've seen in other reviews. There's a dash port, a handbrake port, a shifter port, so it'll be interesting to see if they are all supported. And the final cable to install is the USB-A side cable, which would then go and plug into your PC or peripheral you'll be using. Now we simply click the quick release into place, and the ES wheel is now attached to the R5. It's also worth noting that the quick release does actually work in industry standard motorsport wheel connections. That's going to be a future video, guys. That's pretty funny if you ask me. Because this is a direct drive wheel, there are no mechanical or physical end stops. It's free to rotate infinitely. The only stops are electronic stops. When you power the wheel on, it will just rotate itself to a neutral no matter how many rotations it's done, and now that will be the new neutral. Skip forward 2 weeks and I've now been using the R5 bundle on PlayStation 5 and PC for a load of hours now. I've put a lot of time into driving with this wheel combo. So let's first of all discuss a few things. The pedals, first of all. Objectively, there is nothing bad I can say about these. They work really well. They are a solid construction. They're very adjustable. They feel completely smooth. They have rubber end stops. They're very quiet. But there's a few things to note. They are a Hall sensor effect pedal system. So it works in the same way as the potentiometer pedals do, like they work on a linear motion. So they detect movement rather than pressure. And the Hall effect means they are non-contact. So like the G29 pedals, for example, they always used to get a kind of dead spot on them. You need to clean out very often. These pedals should be completely maintenance free. Now, specifically talking about the throttle pedal, I really like the throttle pedal feel. I think the weight is perfect. It's got a nice long travel, very precise feeling, and it's really good to modulate power on corner exits or when you're just blending through a high-speed corner. The throttle pedal feels really good. Now, the most important pedal of all when you want to be fast with sim racing is the brake pedal. And for me, it's actually quite good. I'm using this pedal, first of all, without the performance kit, so it's completely as you would get it in the R5 bundle. And although it took me a few hours to adjust to the longer travel compared to a G29, I am just as fast with these pedals as I have been on the G29. Now, the important thing to note, the brake pedal is not a load cell brake pedal. It is a distance based brake pedal, and the pedal is quite actually over a long distance, which is a good thing, which once you're used to it, it allows you to modulate your brake distance quite well. So you've got a long range of movement, but the way you use your brakes in sim racing is very much a derived feel. You brake from feeling, and you brake from learned behavior. So it takes a while to get used to that longer travel, but once you're used to it, I think you can be more precise. The weight of the brake pedal, initially in my first unboxing, I felt like it was a little bit heavier than the throttle, but once you're using it with your feet, it's hard to distinguish the actual weight difference. So I would probably prefer a slightly heavier weight spring to the brake pedal, but if you don't have a sim rig or a cockpit and you just have these pedals on the floor, then the lighter brake pedal will work perfectly. There's nothing worse than pushing the pedals away from you when you're trying to get on the brakes. But if you are screwed to a sim rig or a wheel stand or anything from GT Omega, then you will have the ability to stiffen up that brake pedal. And the thing I like most about this brake pedal set, the MOZA pedal set, is that it seems quite adjustable. So you can buy the performance kit, which allows you to change the way the brake feels. It comes with, you can get different rubbers, different springs to change the weight of the pedal. Everything is fully configurable and tunable in the MOZA Pithouse software as well. I'll get to that a little bit later in the video. But basically what I'm thinking is that most of the bad reviews of these pedal sets come from people that are comparing them to load cell pedals. But if you evaluate them based on exactly what they are, they're intended to be a linear based potentiometer Hall effect sensor pedal, and they work really well. I will cover the brake performance kit in more detail in a future video, guys, so make sure you're subscribed for that one, because I think that's worthy of its own video. And the final mention on the pedals is the not included, but I did install it anyway, third clutch pedal. Now, it feels very similar to all of the pedals. It functions perfectly well. And if you need a clutch pedal, then you can be rest assured that the R5 bundle is completely compatible with the clutch pedal. Okay, now let's talk about the wheelbase. Let's just remove the quick release wheel for a moment. So the R5 wheelbase, what this bundle is pretty much named after is 5.5 Newton meters of torque. Now compare that to a Logitech, and that's just over 2 Newton meters of torque. So you're almost getting double the amount of torque than you would with a Logitech G29. And it is direct drive. So that means that inside here, the output shaft is essentially directly connected to the servo motor in the wheelbase. With the gear driven or belt driven wheels, the feedback is driven by a belt or gear system with a reduction ratio to allow the motor that's in the system to drive the force feedback with a little bit more torque, and that means that it can be quite numb. So this MOZA R5 wheelbase is direct drive. It's probably one of the cheapest full ecosystem direct drive wheels on the market, and the first thing I noticed when driving with this is how quiet it is. It's literally silent. After doing years, tens of years with G series Logitech wheels with the gear driven force feedback, the clunking, the rattling, all that stuff, everything that translates through the table, through the desk clamp, however you're mounting your G29, all of that noise is completely gone. It's spooky how silent it is. You can be so aggressive with the wheel, and not only is it silent, it's effortless to turn the wheel when the force feedback isn't providing a resistance for you. It took a bit of getting used to. It's just effortless. It really is incredible how much different the direct drive force feedback is compared to the gear driven force feedback, and that responsiveness comes through in the way the force feedback is delivered to you. So with the direct drive MOZA R5 wheelbase, you're feeling crisp, clear signals back from the game. Those aligning forces that allow you to catch slides and just feel the way the car's gaining and losing grip. It's incredible how much detail you get through direct drive. An analogy I'd like to make is when using like a gear driven wheel, for example, it's like being at a music concert, but you're outside. You can listen and you can pick out what song is being played, but it's just a bit muffled. It's a bit distant. You just can't quite feel what it's doing. Whereas with a direct drive wheelbase, it's like being in the concert at the front row. You're hearing everything from bass line, treble, vocals, crystal clear, coming right through that direct drive wheelbase. Whereas with the gear driven wheels, all you're really getting, you're just like a muted bass line. So direct drive really is such a crisp transition of force feedback to your hands. I think the most important thing this translates to is I think this will help with your consistency when you're sim racing. So you will know sooner when the slides come in. You'll know sooner when you're starting to lose grip or when you've bumped the curb, and you'll be able to react to that and just be more in control of the car. Whereas what I found that I'd learned with the gear driven wheel, the Logitech G29, I was doing most of my driving based on memory, assumption and prediction as to what the car was going to do. Whereas with the R5 wheelbase, the direct drive feedback, I was able to just feel and read exactly what the car was doing at that moment in time. Now, it sounds like a glowing review so far, and it pretty much is, but there is one problem I have with the R5 wheelbase, and that is the default settings that the wheelbase came with. I found them to be a little bit numb, a little bit sticky. I'm going to cover all of the settings when I go through reviewing the software in the section of the video, and I've got some absolutely ideal settings for you guys, but the default settings on the R5 wheelbase I thought were a little bit too safe, damped and sticky. And the final fantastic thing about this R5 wheelbase is the quick release system on it, guys. It's actually incredible. It is what I believe is an NRG industry standard motorsport automotive connection method. I've already had this wheel connecting to my friend's car. He's got a drift car, and his road car that is converted to an NRG connection method, and it just clips straight in. It was pretty fantastic. I'm going to cover that in a few more videos, guys. But yeah, the quick release system on the R5 wheelbase is absolutely incredible. That is rock solid as well. That there is not a hint of play between the quick release system. It is so positive. So now let's talk about the ES wheel, which comes with the R5 bundle. Now, I'm impressed with this wheel. It is the cheapest wheel in the MOZA range, but it doesn't feel cheap at all. I think it's a faux leather surround on the wheel, and I've found it's absolutely perfect to drive with. It grips well when your hands get a little bit sweaty. You can still move the wheel in your hands if you need to slide your wheel around. And the thing I like most about this is, just like I said before earlier on, having a D-pad here and the diamond style layout for the buttons. This is so useful when you're navigating through menus. We are using Sims, guys, or even games, so we do need that familiarity with menu buttons. It does have a light shift bar, which only works when you're using a PC sim. Now, I am going to be testing PS5 a little bit later. The rev lights don't work with the Raslution 2 adapter, but quite frankly, I never look at those lights. I've never used them to shift with, so for me, I'm not even bothered about that. And this ES wheel that comes with the R5 bundle, there are two options for different wheel rims. So you have the Formula style yoke steering, and then you also have a slightly bigger fully circular drift wheel. Now, they are quite low cost options to bolt to this. It's not a completely separate clamp included steering wheel. It is more of a faceplate change to allow you to change the shape of this, but it's quite a low cost option to further tune this R5 bundle to be exactly what you want it to be. The negative to point out over the G29 is there is no rotary dial on this package here. However, on my G29, my rotary dial never ever worked, and I hear other people say that at all. So I think that's a fault on the G29 that is across the board. The rotary dial was absolutely terrible. So it's a shame not to have a rotary dial on this R5 wheel, but I'm not going to miss it because it never worked on my G29 anyway. Right, now let's go and do some driving and I'll explain how it feels. Now, it's all good me talking about the way it feels, but let's go for a lap and I'm going to demonstrate just how it feels. Now, comparing to G29, like the crispness of the force feedback is ridiculous. What you get through the wheel is absolutely crisp, precise encouragement as to what the car is doing, and it really is impressive. Now, coming through Eau Rouge now, you feel the car really weight up at the bottom and go light over the top, feeling every bump detail of every curb. It is actually incredible. It's 4 or 5 times better than the G29 when it comes to portraying what the car is doing. Now, I will be discussing the wheelbase settings in the Pit House software, so this is exactly what I'm trying to get across, is the car feels so sharp and direct, and that is because of the settings that I'm using. I'll also give you a run through of the settings for force feedback in ACC itself, so you can copy exactly what I'm using to get this exact feeling, and it is an incredible feeling. I feel so connected to the car. I've got it set quite loose on traction control. ABS is turned down quite a little bit, and you just feel the car load up through the corners, encouraging you just to keep that car pointing in the right direction as we trail brake into the corners and just ride that curve a little bit. The car starts to move around and off the gas, a little bit of rotation, bouncing all over the curves there, just feeling everything through the wheel. It's very, very impressive. And can we get through this corner flat, just about lifting right in the outside of the curve, just a bit of feedback through the wheel just here, and the high-speed corners, you can just almost feel the rubber gripping the road. It really is very, very immersive. And get the car loaded up through here. Oh, it really feels like a bit of a wrestle. So 5.5 Newton meters of torque feels like a really good amount. I don't think I really would want to go much heavier, and in fact I don't think we're really at full force feedback on ACC right now. In fact, let's go and check the settings. So here are my force feedback settings in ACC. So I use 60% gain. You can go higher, you can go a little bit lower. You can tune that to be how heavy you want your wheel to be. Minimum force, I've got that set to 0%. Damper to 0%, dynamic damping to 0%, road effects to 0%, and frequency 400 Hz. Now, you'd think that would make the game feel, certainly with road effects being at 0%, you'd think that would make the game feel a bit numb, but it really doesn't. I feel that the weight of the car, it feels absolutely ideal. Now the important thing to note here as well is I have my steering lock set to 900 degrees. 900 degrees to match what I've set the wheelbase to in the Pithouse software. Let's look at the Pithouse software now. So let's now talk about the MOZA Racing Pithouse software on PC. This is a significant benefit of the MOZA Racing ecosystem. This software is the same through the whole range of the MOZA wheelbases, whether it's the R5, R9, R12, R21, whatever wheel you're using, whatever pedal set, the MOZA Pithouse software is where you control the settings for all of these. On the home screen, you have the basic readout where you can see the angle of your steering wheel, you can see what base you're using, see the pedal range and set the steering angle limit. You can also reset your center, so if you feel like your steering wheel is a little bit off center, you can then just put it to where you want it to be, center it, and that then becomes your new center. Obviously I've just broken that there, so let's just go back to my center and then click center once again. And that sets my 0 degree, and from here we've got the full range of movements. The steering angle is set to 900 degrees, so there we go, there's our soft stop. On the left hand side, it's where we can dive into the details of the wheelbase more specifically, and the basic settings is where we want to start. There are many preset modes that come loaded in the MOZA Pithouse software. So GT, for example, we can go for the AC official, Formula 1, there's F1 2023, there's Drift for AC official, karting, performance, truck simulator, rally, and you can actually save your own presets. These settings I'm about to discuss with you are my favorite settings, and I'm also going to discuss what each of the settings do to allow you to fine-tune yours if you want to just change something a little bit. So first of all, maximum steering angle, I have mine set to 900 because I find it works best to have the wheelbase set to 900 and then set all the games to 900 as well. And for me, that got the best correlation between wheel rotation in-game and physical with the R5 wheelbase. Now, road sensitivity, this is what gives you the feedback of the feeling of the road, the rumble strips, the curbs, the sand going over the grass, all that kind of stuff. But because it's in red here, if we highlight over the tooltip, basically it's in red here because whatever setting is here is superseded by the force feedback equalizer, this little setting up here. I'll discuss that a little bit later, but for now, because this bar is in red, it means we're not actively using setting number 4. Up here for game force feedback intensity, that is quite simply the strength of the force feedback. If you wanted to half the force feedback strength in the game, you would just set it down to 50%. So it's an easy way to do this. What I like to do, I like to set it to 100 maximum and then just dial it down or up within the game itself. Maximum wheel speed is a really interesting one, guys, because this I think is probably set not quite right from the factory. I have mine set to 100%. What this setting is done is so when the car starts to get out of shape and the wheel wants to align itself or correct itself, or when you get a snap of a bump, this controls the maximum speed that wheel is free to rotate on its own. I think by default it's probably a little bit lower, which is certainly safer, but you do lose a bit of fidelity when you want to just catch the slide if the car is drifting. It doesn't snap to that opposite lock angle that you really want it to be. So I've found mine to work really good set at 100%. The wheel spring strength, this is an interesting one, guys, because this is an effect that is not part of the game feedback. This is just there to help you kind of compensate for the shortcomings of a bad force feedback within a game. I have mine set to 0%, and if we set it to 100% now, we see that the wheel naturally has a tendency to come back to center. Now that is on top of whatever the game force feedback is providing for you. So I think this is a really bad setting, and you should always have this on 0 unless your game is actually terrible with force feedback and then that'll help you. So all we want to be having through the wheel is what the game is telling us. We don't want an artificial return to center spring. Wheel damper, this is again another artificial outside of game feedback to the wheel. So right now I've got it set to 0. That is what I recommend it to be on. But if you have problems with oscillations in any game, then you can add some dampening. So right now there's no damping at all. The wheel is free to turn really fast. If we were just to pop it on 100%, you feel a bit stickiness to the wheel. It just wants to stop rotating. Set it back to 0 and the wheel is free to just continue to spin. Useful to deaden oscillations if you really want it to be, but that dampening, it deadens a bit of the feedback you receive. Moving on to the advanced settings. In here we have force feedback reversal. That is probably never going to be used. That is only, I guess, a legacy item if the game has opposite force feedback. Maximum torque output limit. This is just to almost chop off the top of the torque that the wheel will produce back to you on the R5 wheelbase. I don't think there's any reason to use that at all. Now this is an interesting one. Hands-off protection. By default it's on. I've turned it off because this is more of a protection thing. If you let go of the wheel and the wheel starts to go crazy, after a certain period of time the wheel will shut down and remove force feedback to allow you to grab the wheel again. Now for me personally, I don't want that. I always want to have the wheel active. I'm always going to be holding it. I'm not going to get scared and release the wheel. But when you have the hands-off protection on, you need to make sure that this wheel inertia setting is set to the wheel rim that you are using. Because this is the way it detects if there's no hands on the wheel, because it knows the weight of the wheel and it can detect if that wheel is not being held, and then it will shut down. So for me, I have it turned off. I prefer it to be off. I think having it turned on is a safety feature, but I personally wouldn't have it on. Now we've got natural inertia. Again, this is another kind of dampening and deadening feature. So at the moment I've got it set to the minimum, which is 100%. If you set it to 500, again you feel the stickiness. It works similarly to the dampening, but I'm not quite figured out what the actual difference is between inertia and dampening. But I don't want that sticky feeling. I want the game to tell me exactly what it's doing, so I have mine set to the minimum, which is 100. Another one here, wheel friction. This is another way to help to dampen or protect. So again, wheel friction is at 0%. If we were set it to 30%, you got a bit of friction, but it doesn't ramp up when you spin it faster. It's a constant level of friction. So there's always that same level, whereas with the dampening and inertia, the more you push it, the more it resists. So it's just a base level of wheel friction. Again, I like it at 0%. I want the game to be telling me exactly what the car is doing. And these two here, this is speed-dependent damping. I'm not sure which games are supported by this, but that's adding some dampening when you're going over a certain speed. So as the car gets faster, it's more likely to receive oscillations. And you can set how much that dampening is, and you can also set the point in which that dampening starts to occur, so in speed, in kilometers an hour. Now again, I don't use that at all. I want to know exactly what the car is doing, and certainly whenever I use this on a PlayStation, I don't think these two features exist at all. The PlayStation has no idea. It cannot send the R5 the data to tell it how fast it's going. Now onto the force feedback equalizer curve. This is, I think, is unique for MOZA, and this is in relation to the road feeling. When you have things set in the force feedback equalizer, it overrides the general setting for the road feeling. Now there's various numbers here, percentages of hertz feedback. So the super high vibrations up here, 100 hertz. I've got mine set down to 10% because I think this is where the kind of micro oscillations come in. I don't think that's too necessary. Again, up here 20% on 60 hertz, down to 40 hertz it's set to 30%, 60% at 25 hertz, 90% at 15 Hz and 100% at 10 Hz. And for me, this works really well, especially in ACC. And then when I'm using this on a PlayStation 5, it works great in ACC on PlayStation 5 and ACC and Gran Turismo 7 on PlayStation as well. Then we've got the base force feedback curve. I've got this set completely to linear. You can change the profile whether you want 40% from the game to output 20% to the wheel and vice versa. I haven't played with this. I think linear is perfectly fine. In the miscellaneous section, this is the soft limit stiffness. Not particularly useful or going to be used much, but it is quite incredible to check it. So right now it's on 1, so we've got only 1 softness to the end stops, essentially the electronic end stops. If we set it to maximum to 10 as hard, it's a rigid stop, guys. That is a proper rigid stop. So it's amazing how you can actually get such a hard stop from an electronic motor. It's fantastic. So back to the soft one, and you see it's just a bit softer. We can push a little bit more into it. Then you've got some stuff for temperature control. I've not had this R5B anywhere near being hot at all to the touch, even after 4 hours playtime. So I've just got mine set to the default, which I think is radical, which worked perfectly fine for me. Moving down to the wheel rim, this is where we change the settings. For some reason, the wheel that's displayed on screen is the Xbox version, but it's the exact same button layout, and you can press the buttons, see what buttons they are. You can turn on the button numbering, so you know which button is button number 23, for example. This is where we can change the function of the RPM indicator, change how early the shift lights come on. And down here we can change the brightness of the LED. Now I've actually got my RPM indicator to just be on all the time. I only really use it as a power light. I don't have any function or any use for the RPM light at all on the wheel. Onto the pedals now. This is where you can set curves to the throttle, brake and clutch pedals. You can also recalibrate them and just change them in many different ways. So for me, I have them both set completely linear. If you want to change the way your brake pedal feels, whether you wanted to bite a little bit earlier and be a bit long on the pedal later on, you can change all these curves. And certainly if you're using the brake performance kit, you're probably going to want to recalibrate the brake pedal to the new maximum you want. And you can just fine tune the way the brake would feel just in this software here. Now, going further down on the left-hand side, there's a lot of things that I don't have. I don't have the dash, I don't have the hub, I don't have the gear shifter, I don't have the sequential shifter, I don't have the handbrake. But all these things can be configured through the MOZA Pithouse software. It's incredibly good what you can do in the software. And then if we click on the cloud icon down here, this is where we deal with updating the firmware on the wheelbase or the wheel rim or whatever peripheral you've got connected to your MOZA ecosystem. You can simply just check for updates, one click to update all firmware. You can even roll back to use a previous firmware if you find for whatever reason there is a problem with the latest version or any compatibility. So you don't need to worry about updating the firmware and not being able to go back. There's a full library of old firmware you can go back to. And down here in the kind of person icon, there's system settings. You can change the software to dark mode or whatever, start at boot up, all this kind of software based stuff. Recovery and reset, you can just do soft reset on the wheelbase, all that kind of good stuff. Experimental function, I guess, for rolling back firmware of software perhaps. So overall, I'm incredibly impressed with the MOZA software. Not only is the MOZA Pithouse software fantastic for the PC, there's also a mobile app as well, which essentially gives you access to the wheelbase settings, almost every single exact settings that you have in the Pithouse software on the mobile app connected via Bluetooth. You can do this while you're driving along and change almost every single setting you want to do. So can I recommend the MOZA R5 bundle? The very simple answer is yes. For playing on a PC, it's incredible. It is such a huge step up over the Logitech G29, so much so that I'm almost going to recommend it as the first wheel you should buy for a PC. If you're serious about PC sims, then you might just skip straight through that Logitech G29 and go straight for the MOZA R5 direct drive wheelbase. Not only when you commit to MOZA R5, you have the full range of MOZA ecosystem available to you. So further down the line, if you want to switch out the ES steering wheel to the Formula style steering wheel, then you can just do that. You simply buy the steering wheel, click it in, and you're good to go. So you're almost buying into the MOZA ecosystem, and specifically on PC, I think it is really, really impressive. Now, I want to talk about MOZA R5 using the Raslution 2 adapter on PlayStation, and honestly, this video is getting a little bit too long, so I'm going to put that into a completely separate video. It'll be linked on screen right now for you. I'm going to discuss the R5 wheelbase on a PlayStation 5 using the Raslution 2 adapter, and I'll also be covering your questions that you asked me earlier on in one of my previous videos. I'm going to let you know everything you need to know about the R5 wheelbase, Raslution 2 adapter